What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. Our guest today is Despina Pavlou, who is the founder of the PCOS Oracle and a certified online coach. She is on a mission to raise awareness about PCOS and educate women on how to reverse their PCOS naturally through proper nutrition, individualized exercise programs, and sleep habits. She provides women with tools and knowledge to take back control of their lives and live a life free of the burden of PCOS symptoms. Hi, Despina. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be speaking with you again.
Absolutely. It's so good to talk to you. And I know that you're super passionate about PCOS in particular. Can you share a little bit about your story? Because I know you've had a journey with this. So tell us more.
So I was diagnosed with PCOS at 18 years old. And that day that I was diagnosed was the first time I'd ever heard of PCOS, which, if you think about it, doesn't make sense because it's so common. But I guess, as we know, despite it being so common, many women go undiagnosed. Plus, the awareness now compared to what it was 10 years ago when I was diagnosed is much more, which is obviously a good thing. So women can see the symptoms and, be like, oh, I have to get it checked out because it is something. It's not all in my head, despite doctors making you believe it is all in your head. So looking back, I always like to look back at my journey and pinpoint, when things started to occur. And I think for me, because PCOS doesn't just happen, I woke up one day and I just had PCOS. So I feel like if I was diagnosed when I was 18, I feel like around 16, 17, I feel like it kind of was like a snowball where I did have a lot more stresses, that a lot of stuff kind of occurred during that time period where I feel like stress pushed me to develop like hormone imbalances and, the PCOS symptoms, irregular cycle, etc. So I went to the doctor with an irregular period and I had these like red small spots on my abdomen and chest, which obviously I had no idea what caused it. And the doctor didn't know either. But again, looking back, I recognized that it was the root cause of PCOS. Like it was, high estrogen and a slower kind of metabolism. So I went in with an irregular period and these small spots on my abdomen. And I came out with a PCOS diagnosis. Obviously, not straight away. I didn't go in like, they were just like, yeah, PCOS. It was my GP ran some tests, the standard tests of ultrasound, testing your testosterone, LH, FSH, etc., SHBG. And, I'm glad he did run these tests because generally if girls go into the doctor, they just say, okay, you got an irregular period. That's totally normal. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It will fix itself. Or as with PCOS, you're just given the birth control pill and, that's your solution. So after all these tests done, it indicated PCOS. So when I heard that, I felt various things. On one hand, I was relieved that the doctors found something wrong with me, I guess. But then again, I was angry because I was just confused and upset about what this meant for me. How did this happen? What does this mean for my future? Because, I was told about the risk factors, infertility, risk of the type 2 diabetes, heart disease, just some scary stuff. At that age, you're just like, wow, like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. So it was pretty scary. And just like most women with PCOS I just diagnosed, they're given the birth control pill to help regulate their period and balance their hormones and, quotation marks there. So, I was like, okay, great. That's fine. All I have to do is take this pill and, everything will be perfectly fine. Simple. It's like, that's an easy solution, I thought. So it's common to not want to question your doctor because obviously you feel like they have your best interests at heart. They know this is the solution for PCOS. I was like, I'm not going to say anything, but it's quite upsetting now that I wasn't given another approach. Like I wasn't told about diet or lifestyle or stress or whatever. And I didn't have time to decide, do I actually want to go on the pill? At 18, I didn't have time to decide what I wanted to do. It was just straight away like, you have to do this, otherwise there's no other solution. So I took the birth control pill for 15 months. And, those 15 months were pretty much the worst, personally for me, the worst 15 months of my life. I went through a bunch of side effects on every single birth control pill variation given, from bloating, mood swings, fluid retention, anxiety, and panic attacks, which were all very scary because I've never experienced panic attacks before in my life since starting the pill. So, but the final straw for me was to decide to completely come off it was when my left calf got swollen. And obviously, as you do, I Googled it and they say, oh, this could be thrombosis. And looking at the birth control pamphlet, it obviously said that's a risk. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I decided that was it. I'm coming off it. I should have consulted a doctor, but at that point, I was kind of fed up of just all these non-stop things I was experiencing over those 15 months. So then I decided I wanted to go to a specialist because I went to a general practitioner. I thought, let me try a specialist, an endocrinologist who knows about hormones. But again, they did the usual tests. I mean, he didn't do any blood work because he knew I had PCOS, but he just basically said to me, look, just lose weight. And I said, what about my periods? He was like, 4 periods a year is totally normal. You're fine. Don't worry about it. So I kind of basically left that consultation feeling, I just felt like I was back at square one.
Right.
And then I said to myself, okay, one more time, let me try one last doctor. So I went to an OBGYN and he was a specialist. And then he just did the same tests, came to the conclusion I had PCOS. And again, he was like, just lose weight, cut carbs, and here's a bunch of pills. So I thought, you know what, everyone just keeps saying lose weight, cut carbs. I'm just going to try lose weight, cut carbs, but I don't want any more pills. So that led to me developing an eating disorder because I ended up cutting calories way too much. I was like 800 calories of, food. So I was not addressing the problem. It was causing me even more stress. I had no social life, just all the stuff that develops when you have an eating disorder. So I decided to just embark on my own kind of healing journey and started to research about PCOS from people that do more kind of research into it. So I started to experiment with my diet, change things, trial and error. But at the end of the day, you're the only one that knows about your body. You know if you eat something, the effect on it's going to cause, because it's instantaneous for you. You can notice a difference rather than me going to the doctor. They're not me. So I have to tell them how I feel. So I just, did trial and error until I found a way that works for me. And then after like 6 months of being consistent with these new dietary changes and managing my stress, whatnot, all the lifestyle kind of stuff, my period became regular again, had more energy, better hair, better skin health, and no more panic attacks. So that's basically what I do now. Everything I learned now, I try to educate and empower women to kind of prevent them from, I guess, making the same mistakes and feeling like there's nothing they can do and just feeling overwhelmed, and really just helping them break down everything that they read online that's probably a myth and just doesn't apply to them. Just all this kind of stuff, I try to break it down so they can feel empowered that, you can reverse your PCOS naturally. You don't have to take medications. It is possible once you address the root cause.
Absolutely. I think that is just so empowering because from your story, it just sounds like you have been through all of the negatives and come out with it with, hey, wait a second, just changing my diet and my lifestyle helped me to live a better life, symptom-free, pill-free. For the most part, I think that's pretty amazing and pretty phenomenal. So you mentioned myths. What are some of the PCOS myths?
So I feel like one of the biggest ones is, well, as we touched on it, the birth control pill. The birth control pill does not address the root cause. It's just a Band-Aid on the problem, because the pill, it shuts down that communication between the brain and the ovary, and you're taking in these synthetic hormones. They're not, your hormones, they're man-made. So it's not coming in to fix it. It's just putting a Band-Aid, slapping that Band-Aid on and being like, yeah, you're fine. And yeah, you're going to get a period again, in like air quotes, but it's not a real period. It's like a mechanical breakthrough bleed, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, when you're on that week 4 of like sugar pills, placebo pills, you're going to get a bleed because there's no hormones in those that week. So that's, I feel like, the biggest one. We all just think the pill's going to save us. It's like the solution.
Right. Yeah. And, for those of you that are listening and thinking, well, what's so wrong with a fake set of hormones? The kind of the downside of this is a lot of the young women that do go on the birth control pill at a young age for PCOS, just like Despina, you said, the connection between the brain and ovaries is truncated. It's stopped. The brain can't communicate with the ovaries. And we think, oh, once you get off the pill, it's just going to go back to the way it was. And no, if you've been on the pill for 5, 10, 15, how many ever years, that disconnection has to be restored. Your brain doesn't know to communicate with your ovaries anymore. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the fallout of that is just even more struggle time to fertility, because now suddenly your brain and your ovaries aren't communicating with each other. So yeah, it's unfortunate that that is the state of our world, but it's important, especially with PCOS. I think it's one of the biggest reasons that young women are put on the pill and are never taught or never told that this is going to have potential detrimental repercussions later in life.
Yeah, because I mean, like with the birth control pill, obviously, if you get the combined one, which is estrogen and progestin, if women with PCOS already have elevated estrogen because they're not ovulating, so they're not making progesterone, and their thyroid is also impacted because estrogen is anti-thyroid while progesterone is pro-thyroid, we're increasing that estrogen and we're becoming more estrogen dominant. And that obviously causes the whole infertility and completely, messes up your menstrual cycle. But yeah, it is possible to regain your menstrual cycle after coming off the pill, but it's going to take a couple of months or even years, depending on, how long you're on it, your situation. So if you decide to come off the pill, if you're listening, don't be afraid that you're never going to get your period back, or, you have to replenish those minerals that are lost because of the pill, address some of that inflammation. Your gut is impacted because of the pill. So it requires a lot of restoration in the body, but it is possible to regain. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other myths that we should know about for PCOS?
So the other one is avoiding carbohydrates. There's this whole fear around carbs, around fruit, because we feel that we're being told that carbohydrates or sugar causes insulin resistance, but that's just not the case. And carbs don't make you fat. It's all just, back in like the 60s or 70s, everyone was like afraid of carbohydrates. But number one, like carbohydrates are our primary fuel source. That's what our bodies choose first, so our cells can do their job, like survive. And by research shows by taking carbohydrates out, we are obviously, it's a stress on the body, because if we're not giving the body carbohydrates as primary fuel source, we're going down the route of gluconeogenesis, where our body needs to manufacture glucose. So stress hormones rise, cortisol breaks down muscle tissue, connective tissue, to send it to the liver to manufacture ATP. So as you can see, for the body to create sugar is stressful and inflammatory. So if we're trying to lower stress hormones and lower inflammation, it seems smarter to just give the body what it wants rather than having it to break down its own body to create what it needs. So we need to make things more simple for the body and not making it super stressed out and having to break down its own body for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that so much. Yet, I'm sure there are people out there listening that are like, oh my God, that means I can eat bread and pasta. So let's just clarify, what do you mean by carbs? And if you have any tips on how to do that effectively for PCOS.
So when it comes to carbohydrates, we obviously want to choose our whole foods, like fruits. Fructose is more thermogenic than glucose. And I mean, like simple sugars aren't bad because they are easier for the body to use. But obviously, when we say carbohydrates, we mean those are unprocessed. So we don't want something that's been processed. We've added fortified minerals or, fortified iron. We've added in binders and all this kind of stuff that's gut irritant. So it causes like stress to the gut. So I feel like when it comes to carbs, we need to also assess your own unique carb tolerance, because whatever kind of stage you're at, if you are insulin resistant or if you've been low carb for so long, your ability to metabolize glucose, use it glucose, is impacted. So you need to kind of ease your way back into eating carbohydrates. You're not going to just go into, after being low carb for 10 years, you're not just going to start having 300 grams of carbohydrates every day, because it's not going to be the right way.
You're going to do well with that. Absolutely.
So you need to kind of go in increments, see how your body responds, see how you feel based on whether you use a glucometer or a CGM, or you just see how you feel after having carbohydrates. Do you feel energized? Can you think clearly? Or do you have slumps and crashes? Do you have brain fog? Like there's kind of symptoms that you can gauge when you have a meal, have carbohydrates, that your body telling you, look, you kind of had too much carbohydrates, or you haven't paired it enough with protein and fats. So there's always kind of stuff that you can use as an indication to adjust your diet. So there's a lot of stuff that we are in control of. We often feel like we need someone to tell us what to do, but your body's telling you what to do. It's giving you signs and signals, because, it's all the signs and symptoms we experience is your body telling you, look, we need a little bit of help here. Can you just help me out? So that's basically some of the carbohydrates would be, I feel potatoes are whole foods. And I feel like soaking them and adding a fat can help increase digestibility. And again, also with stuff like white rice or brown rice, again, they're not bad. Again, if you soak them and add some fat, which can again help increase digestibility. Even stuff like honey, everyone's kind of scared of honey, but it does have its good nutrient properties. Those are some good stuff. And then obviously your root vegetables like butternut squash can be just super beneficial, things like that. And then when it comes to bread, I personally prefer sourdough, because that kind of breaks down more of the gluten. So it's not much of a gut irritant again, because I feel like nowadays bread is a lot more processed, it's fortified, it's hybridized. So there's a lot more harmful ingredients used to make wheat, and then obviously that wheat makes the bread. So it impacts people more because it's more harder to digest because of all this stuff that's added to it and the way it's processed and the way it's created. So I feel like just avoiding processed stuff and choosing more things that you make or have fewer ingredients. So if you go to buy something and you see that it's got hundreds of ingredients and you don't even know half of what those ingredients are, it's long words, scientific kind of words, and you can't even pronounce it, then that's something I would say leave it on the shelf and go to another aisle that has just simple 5 ingredients, let's say, that you know what they are. So for example, with bread, just choose something that has the flour, the water, salt, and that's it. That's all you need to make it.
Yeah. Awesome. And in terms of root causes, what do you think it is that is causing or contributing to the cause of PCOS?
I feel like when we're diagnosed, I feel like many women can relate, is they are told they have high male hormones. And then we kind of just think that we should be focusing on the high male hormones. That's the problem. So we get fixated on finding ways to lower these male hormones. So if we just take it from the top, PCOS is a metabolic and endocrine condition. So PCOS is, again, maybe your listeners know about the different types of PCOS, but there's insulin resistance, adrenal, inflammatory, thyroid-related, and pill-induced. So seeing these types now gives us an indication of what may be driving our PCOS and symptoms. But I feel like it can be said that with all these types, it can be driven by that same root cause, which is stress in the body. I mean, this shouldn't really be a shock. As we know, stress is a driver for most chronic conditions, diseases. And when we speak of stress, it's common to people to think, no, I'm not stressed. But stress isn't just studying for exams or feeling pressured at work to meet a deadline. Stress includes being exposed to toxins, over-exercising, under-eating, not sleeping. So your stress is the driver for, I feel like a lot of people might be like, okay, but what does stress have, how does it cause, what's the root cause, how does it cause all those PCOS symptoms like hair loss, hirsutism, acne, irregular cycle, and weight gain, insulin resistance? And the root cause that I've discovered from my research and just from working with people, and we kind of touched on it before, is estrogen. Like estrogen rises in relation to cortisol. And there is studies to suggest the link between PCOS and estrogen. And I feel like that's something that women aren't actually aware of, and doctors don't actually explain it, because we're told we have high male hormones and that's what we need to fix. But like I said, we're never told what's driving these male hormones. And the answer is estrogen. So to lower those male hormones, which is a symptom, just like an irregular cycle, just like polycystic ovaries, they're all symptoms of PCOS. We need to get our body out of the stress state and that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which will help. If you get yourself out of that stress state, you're going to end up helping to lower estrogen, because, estrogen isn't a bad hormone. We do need it in the body. It does help your menstrual cycle, fertility, but estrogen thickens your endometrium and stimulates the growth of ovarian follicles. But the problem is when estrogen accumulates in the body. Like I said before, estrogen inhibits thyroid function. So when your thyroid is inhibited, it's suppressed, so it's not producing its thyroid hormones. So we're obviously not going to end up producing progesterone, because with a healthy thyroid, we're producing pregnenolone and then progesterone. So we obviously need a functioning thyroid to make those hormones. So even researchers like Saley and Georgie found excess estrogen imitates a shock response, which increases cortisol. And Dr. AP explains that estrogen activates the adrenal stress reaction by the way of the hypothalamus and pituitary by direct actions on the adrenal glands. So Dr. AP explains that the inability of the ovaries to make progesterone without thyroid causes the adrenals to be overstimulated, and they are the source of increased DHEA and other androgens and estrogen. And, Dr. AP, if anyone wants to read more about that, Dr. AP has a book called Progesterone in Orthomolecular Medicine on excess estrogen and progesterone deficiency. So that's something that gives you an insight on the true impact of estrogen on the body and why progesterone is so important for our overall health and well-being.
Yeah, awesome. Yes. All of that. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about what someone with PCOS could do to support their healing journey. I know that you said you can live symptom-free, you can have a healthy life with PCOS. So what are some of the steps that one could take to start healing their PCOS?
So when I work with clients, and what I did for myself personally, is I have 5 components. So it's diet and supplements, then there's exercise, sleep, mindset. I feel like that was 5. Diet, so that must have been 5. So obviously we all know diet is super important, but I always like to start off with the mindset aspect, because I feel like I said in the beginning when I was talking about my journey, it really does impact your mental health. You kind of feel like a victim. You have that victim mindset. You feel like you're not in control. The PCOS is doing all this stuff to you and I'm just not in control of doing anything. But you do have that control through making all these changes with your diet, exercise, sleep. Oh yeah, and stress management was a 5th one. That's what I forgot. So starting off with the whole mindset and getting into that state of I am in control. I don't have to feel like the victim. Get you out of that state of, when you get out of that mindset, you can see solutions. You can see clearly of what you need to do to get you from here to there. So that will be like my kind of first step. And then the second is obviously addressing that diet and potential supplements, because obviously I feel like most people will need supplements at some point because our soils are depleted. We're getting fewer nutrients in our food because of the depleted soils. Was much more stressed. So minerals like magnesium and vitamin C are obviously getting depleted, so we have to replenish them. And taking, magnesium can be a great addition to increase your intake, especially if there's moments when you have a lot more stress. If you have a higher magnesium burn rate, you're going to want to include more magnesium into your diet. So taking a natural magnesium option like magnesium chloride bicarbonate can be a great way to increase your intake in addition to your diet. Obviously, diet is the major focus, but as we said, because of depleted soils, because you get stressed, they can be better way to just increase it. Then moving on to exercise, I think as a personal trainer, I've always been into fitness. So I wanted to become a personal trainer and become certified so I can educate women on, we all know exercise is super important. It's got a lot of benefits, but as with anything, taking it to the extreme can be detrimental to your health and hormones. So over-exercising can harm your hormones. And if you're suffering from PCOS, you're already having overactive adrenals, you're already in that stress state, you already have a low thyroid. So you need to exercise in a way that supports your metabolism, supports your thyroid, and doesn't dig you deeper into that hole of more symptoms. So I help women create individualized, personalized exercise program that works with where they are at the moment, like how your metabolism is, how your thyroid is, and then help and teach them how to nourish the body pre and post workout, and maybe even intra workout, so they can not feel those negative effects that are caused when we exercise. Because again, exercise is a good thing. It's a stress on the body. Nonetheless, it's a stressor. Exercise is a stressor. It causes stress hormones to rise. So knowing how to, knowing how to avoid these negative effects is important. So again, so you don't get deeper into that hole of negative symptoms and feel fatigued and not be able to recover properly. And then the next thing would be stress management and sleep. I mean, these are pretty obvious components. Everyone needs to sleep. I feel like we're in this kind of grind, hustle, sleep, you don't need to sleep. It's not important. It's not necessary. But that's when your body repairs, it recovers. You just need to sleep to help your body repair and recover. And then stress management. We want to be managing our stress. We don't just want to get the stress and put it in a little box in our body and just push that down, because all this is trauma, and trauma creates more, impacts your nervous system and makes you even more stressed and causes all this stuff that you just need to deal with. So finding ways to manage your stress can really help you, manage that trauma and help you lower your stress hormones and just feel more happy and content with things. So wherever that aspect of stress management is for you, whether it's, reading a book or going out, having a laugh, watching a comedy, having a hobby, just something that kind of gets your mind off your daily stresses. Because, we're never going to get rid of stress. Like, stress is always going to be there. It's just finding ways to manage it, control it, and making our body resilient to stress. And so it doesn't impact us as much as it would if our body was impacted. So supporting the thyroid. So we're producing progesterone and pregnenolone, which can inhibit the stress system of high cortisol from ACTH, triggering the adrenals to make cortisol.
Awesome. Yes. I think that so much of what you said is foundational to healing in general, but specifically for PCOS, and to be able to do it in a way that's in alignment with your hormones, the way your body's functioning or not functioning, and really being targeted in the approach to the healing. So thank you so much for sharing your 5 steps. And I know that you have a wonderful gift for the listeners. Do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, so I have created the PCOS Support Manual, which is basically includes all the stuff just mentioned at the root cause, delving deep into estrogen and sluggish thyroid and how to support that. I mentioned 6 foods for PCOS, so simple foods that you can add into your daily diet to give you the nutrients your body needs to heal. And yeah, that's simple little guide that, awesome. Bite-sized kind of information to help you on your journey.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. We will have that in our show notes, along with your social media handle, which is at PCOS Oracle. You also have a podcast called the PCOS Oracle. So for those of you listening in, make sure to follow Despina and check out her podcast as well. And we'll link all of those things in the show notes. And we'll see you soon for lots of tips coming up from Despina. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.